Let's talk about dropping some highlights to white on a project we're working on. Basically, I have this S, and I'm going to open it in Photoshop. And when we photographed this on a white background, it included some shadows and things. So there are a couple of things here that I might do. I'm not actually going to drop highlights to white because it looks like the highlights are already white. So if you did need to drop highlights to white and your image looked a little muddy, you could use an adjustment layer in Photoshop, which is this little symbol right here, and you could click on that and go to curves, and you can set the white point by using the white eyedropper tool. There's a sampling the image to set the white point. You can set the gray point, and then you can set the black point, but we're going to set the white point. And if this background was not white and we wanted to click on it, it would automatically set that to white. Now if you want to see this in action, you'll see here I have the shadow. When I click on the shadow, it'll make that shadow white, but it'll also make any pixels that are of a similar range white. So it really did wash out my overall photo. So if it doesn't wash out your photo, fine, close it and carry on. I'm going to throw this particular adjustment layer away. Alright, now so what I'm going to do is I do want to get rid of maybe a little bit of what's going on here with this shadow. So I'm going to zoom in, and I can use this really cool tool called the Quick Selection tool. Now this Quick Selection tool, you can change the size of its brush, so you'll see that the circle got bigger and now the circle is smaller. So if you're in a detailed area, you may want to use a smaller brush size. If you're in an overall large area, you could use the larger brush size. Now this is pretty small detail, so I'm going to go ahead and use this size right here. Now when I click, it'll automatically select an area. If I click and drag, you will see how it will select pixel ranges that are close in value to where you're at, to where you're selecting. I'm going to hit Command minus so you can see what's going on, what's selected. Now you want to be careful and make sure that it doesn't select anything important on your image, such as it has selected this stem. Now to deselect, you can hold down the Alt key and drag. The only problem is this brush size is too large, so I need to reduce the brush size. So if I hold down the Alt key and drag, it will deselect. If I hold down the Shift key and drag, it will add to the selection. Okay, so I'm holding down the Shift key and I'm dragging over certain areas to add to the selection. And again, it's grabbed something I don't want to, so hold down the Alt key, drag over that. So you have to be careful about where you're dragging and how far out or in you're dragging. Okay, so that's one tool I like to use to grab certain areas. Now I want to fill this area with white, so I want to make sure my foreground color in my toolbar is white. It is not. So I'm going to make it 0 cyan, 0 magenta, basically 0 of any color. And I can hit the delete key and it will ask me, do you want to fill this with a foreground color or the background color? This is your foreground color, this is the background color. So I want to fill it with foreground color. I hit OK, and we will see that that shadowed area is now gone. It's just white. Now the background color, if I wanted this whole entire background to be black, on the project we're working on, we would actually want a rich black. So it would be 30% cyan, 30% magenta, 0% yellow, and 100% black. Rich black just prints much nicer than just a 100% black. So I might go through and clean up this image. Excuse me, let me cancel that. And always zoom in and see what you have. You can hold down the spacebar key, and that way you don't have to zoom in and out so much. When you use a spacebar and then you mouse over, depress your mouse and move, you will see that your image will move. So that's kind of a nice thing about Photoshop that works really well. So here I'm seeing some noise outside of my image, and so I'm clicking and dragging around. Now I will zoom out to see how much of this it has grabbed. If you don't like what it's done, hit Command Z. If you don't want to add to an image and you already have stuff selected, hit Command D to deselect. I'm going to zoom back in, move around, and maybe do this again. I'm hitting Command minus to zoom out just a little bit. So I'm going to go in through here and I'm going to paint around the areas that I need to get rid of. Again, if it grabs something you don't want to, hold down the Alt, drag over it, hold down the Shift if you want to add to a selection, and if you want to delete that area, just hit the delete key and let it know whether it's a foreground color of white or whatever you have in the background color, which in this case is rich black. Sometimes that window won't show up and it'll just delete stuff. Okay, so I'm just going to keep on cleaning up and get rid of any extra noise that's on the outside of this from photographing it. Again, I'm going to Alt or Option drag to have it take away from the selection, and I can hold down Shift or just keep on dragging for it to continue the selection. I just hit the delete key and it's asking me what I want to fill it with again. So I'd go through and clean up this whole letter. Okay, so I'm going to assume I have cleaned up the whole letter. Now I'm ready to have this worked out for my 8x8 inch project that I'm working on. So I'm working on a project where this will be the initial letter, the first letter of the word, and my word is going to be sustainable, and it needs to be an 8x8 inch format. So I need to check and see what I've got here. First I'm going to go to image mode, and I need to change this to CMYK because this is for printing. It's going to give me this warning. I hit OK. Now if you see your yellows go a little green, you might have to go and do some adjusting. Now I'm also going to go and make sure the image size is good. It's 300 pixels per inch, 8x11. That's a little bit bigger than I need. So I'm going to leave that alone for just a second. I'm going to save this because I'm going to use it again for my 8x8. I'm going to copy and paste it to an 8x8 document. So I'm going to create a new document, and that is going to be in inches, so I need to change this from pixels to inches, and this is going to be 8x8. But I need to think about a bleed. If this image, any of it, bleeds off the edge, which I have a white background, so most of the time that's not a problem, but if I have a black background, I'd have to bleed that off 1/8 of an inch on each side, which adds 1/4 of an inch to my entire document. So I'm going to manufacture this with a bleed. I want to change my color to CMYK. Background color white's fine. Everything looks good. I could title this S for sustainability, sustainable rather, and hit OK. Now I have a blank document. I'm going to go back to my original document and I'm going to select all, which is Command A. I'm going to copy it, which is Command C, and I go to my new document and I paste it, which is Command V, and it says it right here. It's going to be too large, so I need to reduce it down, but I need to reduce it down so I don't stretch it or expand it or condense it. So I'm going to use a keyboard shortcut, which is Command T, but where we find that is we go to Edit and Free Transform. So Command T for transform. Now you can see that the original bounding box is larger than what I need, so I need to hold down the Shift key and click and drag on a node, a corner node, and I can click on the image and move it, and click and drag. And basically what we're going to do is in InDesign we're going to put the rest of the word in here. I could rotate it if I'm thinking sustainable is a pretty long word, so I might be able to fit it in there a little bit better if I rotate it. Plus, it's a movement on the upswing, so this is diagonal going up, provides a little bit of tension. And when I get it where I want it to be and it's proportionally scaled, I hit return, and it makes it stick. Now I have to remember that this is right on the edge. I do have my bleed. I don't want that to be right on the edge, so I might pull that in a little bit, because when I place this in InDesign, it's going to the bleed is going to cut off that 1/8 of an inch on all sides. Okay, so I'm going to go to Image Mode, make sure it's CMYK. Go to Image, Image Size, double check and make sure I'm 300 pixels per inch at 8 1/4. And now I'm ready to save it to use it in print. So I would save it as a TIFF, which stands for Tagged Image File Format. I go to my desktop, It's called S for Sustainable TIFF. I'm going to save it. All this information is okay, so I'm going to hit OK. And I'm going to go ahead and keep the layers because I might have to move that S again, so I'm going to hit OK, otherwise I would flatten it. And it's ready to be used in InDesign. So I'm going to close this or minimize it, and then I'm going to, this is all ready and prepared to use in InDesign. So that will be part of what I'll be doing in the next recording. Thanks.